Okay, now we have Stitch Pink 2020, block 28. This one is called Groovy Granny. Nice job, Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie from Rocking Chair Quilts, and I'm back again today for block 28 of Moda's Stitch Pink. This one's called Groovy Granny because it's a big granny square. So, this one's a little tricky.
Doesn't look tricky.
It doesn't. There's a little note up here about it using 4 different colors, and I just use the colors that they call for. But they're the way they have you lay these out, and we're going to start with that because there's not anything that you're going to pre-sew for your little units to start with. Well, that I would pre-sew for our units to start with. So what I've done on my little diagram is I marked the squares that are the medium. Sometimes you can't read what I put. And the light. So now I'm going to lay those out like that. But to help me do that, I'm going to use a Post-it note because I want to do it from the top down.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you how I would do that. So the first thing you do is I would use my design board, but Lisa says no. So I'm going to separate my squares here by colors. And I'm going to start with the medium, which is this one. I'm going to put them
on point.
On point, meaning not with the flat side down, but with the point down. That's on point. So I'm going to start with 4 mediums. And then I'm going to move my Post-it note down. I'm not going to worry about my triangles on the side yet. I'm going to have 3 lights.
I'm going to show you a diagram.
Kind of put those right in the little...
Nest them right in there.
Nest them right in there.
Or nestle them.
Yes. And then I'm going to have to transfer all these to my design board to take over to my sewing machine. So then I'm going to move on down again. I didn't mark my dark and the white because they're pretty obvious. So I'm going to have...
They stand out.
Yes. So I'm going to have a medium and a dark and another dark and another medium.
Okay.
Then I'm going to move my Post-it note down 1 more row. So we always have 4 and then 3 and then 4, and now we're going to have 3 again. So my light's going to be right in the middle. And I've got 2. Did I say my light's going to be in the middle?
White is going to be in the middle.
Yes, white's going to be in the middle. I don't know what I said.
I think you said light, but we understood.
This is why I asked. Because then I'm going to have 2 lights next to that. So there's 4, 3, 4, 3. Now I'm going to move on down. I've got medium, dark, dark, medium. So medium, dark, dark.
That's not a dark.
Not dark. You know, right after you do, you think, that's not right. And on point again, medium.
Okay.
4, 3, 4, 3, 4. Move on down 1 more time. And move down too far. I'm going to have 3 lights. I thought, I just did 4. That can't be right. I may have started too low here.
You're okay.
Because I can't easily scoot them back up. So there are my 3 lights. And then the very last row, I've got my 4 mediums. And hopefully that's what I have left. On point. I can just grab one. There we go. Now, the 4 smaller triangles, you started with squares, cut them into triangles, go on 4 corners. And all the other ones go in between. And they're bigger. Then I'm going to show you how we sew these together.
We have 3 of those per side?
Yes. Now you can see our square coming together. That's right. I did have room there at the bottom.
You did.
So we're going to sew these together in diagonal rows. So I'm not going to worry about this corner yet, or this corner yet. I'm going to take this triangle, line up this corner, sew 1/4 of an inch right here. Don't worry about how much you have left over. I'm going to press that out. Then I'm going to sew, line this triangle up the same way, and sew it on. So I'm going to sew that row together. Then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to line this triangle up in that corner, flip it out, sew these 3 squares to it, do the same thing with this one. So I could just do the 2 with the triangles on them first and have that already done, finished, and then sew those 3 together. Then I'm going to sew this row together, same way.
And one really long row.
Then this really long row, but now I've got one of the corner triangles. So what I'm going to do is fold my end square in half and give it a quick finger press. Now I've got a little bump there. I'm going to fold this one in half, but I'm going to fold it with, I folded this one with the right sides out. I'm going to fold this one with the wrong sides out. So when I want to center them, and when I do, I'm going to lay them together. And when I folded this one with the right sides out and this one with the wrong sides out, now they're both of the little creases are going the same way, so they'll lay right on top of one another. So when I sew this one, it's going to have these about equal amount on the
Yeah, so
outside
it's
edge.
centered on there.
Centered on there, so I'm going to sew that on first. Then I'm going to sew all these together, and we're going to do the same thing on this corner. And I'm going to continue on sewing my rows. We're going to sew these on after we get our rows finished. So we can go ahead and do this and do the same thing to this one. I'll come back and show you how we do that.
Okay.
Okay.
You've got some sewing to
do. Okay, so I have my rows sewn together, and I want to point something out. So I showed you how to sew these squares onto the corner, just line up that corner, and that's all good. When you get down to here, I went ahead and did my corner ones on this strip. They show that in the diagram. And when you get to the next one, I'm just sewing them down. This one, you notice, gets sewn on the opposite of the one above it, because this one always has to sew to the square. So you always want to make sure. I sewed this one on wrong twice, so don't feel bad if you sew it on wrong.
Could you have just flipped it around though?
I thought about that, but I already had this one.
Oh, if you already
Yeah.
had that one on, right.
And
Yeah.
I had this one laying out like this, and I thought, that is not going to work. That is not going to work. So then I turned it around and think, oh,
That's going to work.
Okay, so another thing I want to point out, we had this discussion on our Facebook Live this past week. Do you clip off your dog ears? You do not want to clip these off. We're going to trim the whole block up later. I know these look really ugly and kind of silly, but leave those on until you get the whole thing sewn together, and then we'll take care of those dog ears. So the next thing I'm going to do before I sew my rows together is I'm going to sew this other corner on now that I have these 2 done. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. I'm going to fold this in half, kind of very similar to what I did before when I was showing you how to do these ends. Fold it in half like that. I'm going to sew this one to the, fold this one to the wrong side again, so they'll lay in there together. Now I'm going to sew this on. I'm going to pin right there where that fold was, and if it's not exactly in the center, that's okay. We're going to trim this block off. It's going to, when we get finished sewing it, it's going to be larger than 12.5 inches, and I'm going to show you how to trim that up. So I'm going to pin that on just like that. I'm going to do these 2 ends like that first, and then I'm going to start sewing my rows together. And when I do sew my rows together, I have pressed my seams open, but if you don't like to press your seams open, the diagram shows you exactly which way to press each row
To get opposing seams.
to get opposing seams. And I don't have to think about that because mine are all open. So I'm going to pin, all of these are going to match up now.
Or at
Even
least they
my-
should.
At least they should, yes. If they don't, you can kind of fudge them a little bit. So this is what I'm going to do, and I am a pinner. But even if I wasn't, I would be pinning these. So that'll sew to that one. Once I get that finished, I'll press that out, and then I'll pin this one the same way all the way down.
So you'll come back when all the rows are sewn together.
I'll come back when all the rows are sewn together and show you how to trim it down.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, I got it all put together. Now I trimmed off my little dog ears. Oh, that one didn't get pressed down. I have to press that again. So you can see it still needs to be trimmed up. So Lisa is good enough to bring her 12.5-inch trimming ruler here. So I'm going to lay this on here. I'm going to pull this back toward me so I can cut it.
I'm kind of focusing on that center square.
That's where I'm focusing too. Okay, now you can see I have my vertical horizontal lines and my diagonal lines right on this middle square, and they go right to the corners. So this is, yeah, I'm assuming, good. Centered. Now you can see there's not a whole lot to trim off. And you can also see that I've got more than 1/4 of an inch outside my points. That's okay. They said in the pattern that this...
it was a floating block.
Right. It's meant to look like it's floating in here, so your seam won't go right to your points, and that's okay. So I'm going to just trim around my ruler here.
Now this edge there, you barely have anything to shave off.
But that's okay.
But there was still edge there. So.
Right. Now I don't have a big enough rotating mat to just spin this around. So I was just going to pick it up and move it, but look, I can't do this. It's too far away.
Oh.
But I'll try. Yes, you can. But I can come over here and do it. There we go. Now it's much prettier.
It is.
All right. Thanks for joining us for block 28. We're almost to the finish line.
Woohoo!